I remember that's why I started a solar company in 2010. Was my dad tried to get solar, and he called 4 different companies in Utah, and only 3 of them answered the phone, and the fourth one never showed up. And I was like, well, geez, I can answer the phone, and I can show up, and that seems to be more than what the other guys are doing right now. And so fast forward to today, like we might not have had everything perfect a year and a half ago when we launched, but we just really focused on a good customer experience with our sales dealers and helping them however we can, whether it's consulting or connecting the dots for other opportunities for them. We just really focused on that.
Hey everybody, this is Sam Taggart, and I am doing a repeat guest on this one. This is a repeat. We got Jess Phillips in the house, and before I bring him on, last time, well, I don't even know, a couple podcasts ago, I challenged everybody to do something different. If you didn't hit me up, you got to hit me up and tell me what you did different that day when you're listening to this. Every once in a while, Jess, I'm like, well, I'm gonna do a challenge, or I'm gonna say, hey, go on a run today, or do something random. But no, I a couple announcements. We got our sales tournament starting here. We're in Grit, which is a 2v2 tournament, and this is in our platform called The Streets. And then a couple things. We have a Street Smarts launching, and depending when you're listening to this, I've got this week, which is the 25th and 24th. So we're literally judging a DECA tournament, which is high school entrepreneurship program and helping those kids kind of learn sales and entrepreneurship. But the big thing that you guys could all help me out with is this summer, we're launching a tournament alongside our National Knocking League for high school kids and teaching them how to really learn door-to-door sales businesses like curb painting, lawn mowing, window washing, and we need kids to register for it, where we'll teach them how to do it and then compete them for prize money throughout the summer. So it gives, if you have a high school kid or a middle school kid, or you have friends that are like, hey, I want my kid actively engaged in some kind of work that's not just going and working for Chick-fil-A or something, but like having the street smarts, the grit, the hustle, the education there is going to be something that we're pushing and providing and building a platform for the youth. And it's just something we're super passionate about. So go to Street Smarts on our website if you want to get involved. We love volunteers. We have, we're trying to go to our national DECA tournament with 24,000 kids in Atlanta in April and sponsor and do some donations there. And we're trying to do some really cool stuff. So I figured before I bring Jess on, I was like, I wanted to bring up some cool announcements just for those that are looking to get behind something that they can find passion behind. Anyway, so I'll bring Jess on. So Jess, it was formerly one of the founders of Auric, right? Like big Utah company and in solar, and now is one of the founders of Quativa, which is a sales enablement app that really kind of connects and bridges sales and install partners. And they've had a real cool glow up over the last few years in the tech side. But what's cool is Jess, in our last podcast, we talked about some of the biggest commercial deals. He won a lot of big awards for doing some massive commercial deals. And, they put solar on the Rio Tinto, which is the large stadium for the soccer team here in Utah. And, just a seasoned veteran in the game of solar. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about partnerships. So anyway, tell us, like, for those that didn't listen to the last one, I guess, tell us a quick little rundown of your story so it kind of gives us some context.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Sam. I'd love to. I've been doing solar for 13 years, 2010. I did, last time I mentioned 4 different products. I've done door-to-door myself, so I always want to make sure I connect that for a lot of you guys listening that respect and love what you guys do. And whenever been asked, like, what was the most influential job or anything, every time, by far, it's what I learned knocking doors from the most.
That's why we're doing the Street Smarts thing. It's like, if we can teach that at a young age.
Yes, I love that.
Like the most important job, the most lessons I've learned, and that's why I'm passionate about pushing this initiative. So anyway, keep going.
No, you're right. I mean, I look back at, when we started the company out of a garage, and then we did residential sales and then commercial and our own installs. And we were 260 employees at our peak in 4 or 5 different states, and did solar for UNLV to Rio Tinto Stadium, like you mentioned, to Adobe. Some really high profile commercial projects. Soleil Loss, which won Energy Project of the Year in 2019. And I remember there was 2017 Entrepreneur of the Year finalist award that we were getting interviewed for. And that was one of the questions. And it's hard, you never know what's going to come out of your mouth when they ask these questions, and they try to sometimes keep them from you till right at game time to make them really organic. And so it was interesting. They asked that one, and that was the easiest question they asked me. It was easy to say, like, had some really interesting jobs, had some really great mentors, I think is the biggest thing I've been blessed with. I've always been around some of the industry's best, whatever I've been doing. But that was easy for me to answer, is like, what's the most influential? By far, knocking doors. So I've done it for 4 things. Went on an LDS mission 2004, 2006, and Ohio Cleveland mission is what it was. And that was fun. And then alarms for a year, 2008 in Miami. And then the other one that's unique, obviously solar did a little bit when we started our company, but rock chip repair. That's one that's rare. You remember that? Yeah, on the windshield. So yeah, there's a little bit about me, background, and then did solar for 10 years with our own company, and then saw Quativa middle of 2020 during COVID, and was blown away with what they were working on. They'd been working on it for about 3 years at the time, and it was about to launch, and was just super excited to see what it do. I thought, man, if I would have had Quativa when we were doing what we were doing, it would have been amazing. So I really love what I get to do. My role as chief sales officer, just building partnerships for Quativa. And that's really, even with all the other stuff we've done, commercial and stuff, I really just enjoy seeing guys on the front lines, just getting their first deal, or guys starting their own company and getting their teams going, and just hearing those success stories or expansion and all those things. So that's what really drives me, what I really enjoy. The projects, big commercial projects, were fun, but they were, as they would grow and build, they were still just things, where seeing people grow and build is really what I enjoy and like to be a part of. So Quativa has really allowed me to do that. So I love what I do.
That's awesome. And in this, tech kind of interesting startup, I guess, what have been some of the roadblocks or unforeseen pivots you've had to make since 2020? I mean, it's only been a year and 2 years, really.
Yeah, I think the biggest things to look at, like when you start, because we really bootstrapped Quativa, and it's multiple 7 figures to start a tech company and get it going. And we've been blessed. The founders of Quativa have had a lot of success with other solar companies, and so they were able to do a lot of the funding from that. But you still have to be, like, technology is super expensive to develop, and so we really had to be strategic about how we did that until we could get to our funding, which happened in October. So, just really focusing on the customer experience. I mean, we might not, especially last year, we weren't perfect with the tech. We're still got a lot of new features coming out, a lot of new upgrades, especially aesthetically with like the actual technology itself, the software for the iPad. But also with our installation partners, there's always a learning curve as our model is, let's bring in multiple install partners in each state. So we're diversified, so that when a company gets busy, we can maintain 30-day installs year round all the time. And so that's one of the things we do for our partners, but it takes a while to get to that place. And so in the meantime, what we did was we just really focused on customer experience. That's something we can control from day one. I remember that's why I started a solar company in 2010, was my dad tried to get solar, and he called 4 different companies in Utah, and only 3 of them answered the phone, and the 4th one never showed up. And I was like, well, geez, I can answer the phone, and I can show up. And that seems to be more than what the other guys are doing right now. And so fast forward to today, like, we might not have had everything perfect a year and a half ago when we launched, but we just really focused on a good customer experience with our sales dealers and helping them however we can, whether it's consulting or connecting the dots for other opportunities for them. We just really focused on that. And now that we do have the technology in a real good place and the partnerships, and we've got some incredible install times and people really loving the tech, and new features are coming out where you can sell a roof in the app, or you can use Solar Insure, different products like that now in the app. When you combine that with Yeah.
We just added D2DU to your people too.
Oh yeah, that actually launches today. We're literally letting some of our partners get access. They're so excited, man. Like especially the roofers. Like we're really excited about that partnership. So yeah, we partner with you on that, and it's been a long time coming just to get that all working the right way. But we've got some good people. Riley is on our team, and he's helping facilitate all that, which is so great to have him. Man, he's in there.
That's so nice. He probably knows. He's like, I got this.
Oh, it's so good for me. I was like, hey, can you do this? Can you make this thing hum for us? And so, yeah, that product is awesome, man. Your online platform for training, I think it's going to be huge for everybody. So I love that we can bring that to the table.
No, and that kind of, like obviously any growing company is going to have its, we can't do it all tomorrow. People are like, can you do this? You're like, I can with more money and developers.
Yeah, exactly.
I can with some time and money. You want to, I love that idea. I built a couple of tech companies. I'm working on a third one right now. And, you're like, definitely, that would be great if we had time. And I'll put it at the list of all the different features that we want in this thing. Like you said, it's more expensive than people anticipate. And I feel you on that. So So the model, like you're like, hey, we partner with these EPC companies. We make it simple for you to sell solar through just a tech couple clicks, right? And, obviously you have our training platform, you have, different integrations to CRMs, things like that, to where it streamlines it. And I think tech is the biggest impediment. I remember obviously 2010, you probably like permit running yourself, like physical handout, like drawing it. Like, yeah, I remember like I had a whiteboard that was like my CRM, and I'm just like scratching things off and moving it to the next box on my whiteboard. Yeah. It wasn't that sexy when I first got in. I'm sure when you first got in, it was our manila folders, dude.
We just use pigeons to deliver the permit, actually.
The pigeons.
Yeah.
You're on pigeons.
Yeah.
But like, what's interesting is how the solar world is segmented now. I'm going to say in three aspects. You have sales, you have technology, which I'm going to put good leap and financing and that in that world. And you have installers. And some people, like a Sunrun, they do all of those three.
Right.
But it's kind of cool. You found your lane. You're like, we're going to be that middle chunk that's going to be the financing, the integration to kind of bring sales and install partners together. And, and a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs or roofers or, even solar companies are like, I'm going to do it all. I'm going to build my own tech. I'm going to go, do my own installs. Like I don't like EPC companies and they're taking too much. Like, I think that the way that the solar industry is structured is quite beautiful. Like there is a good, I don't know. I guess, what is your 2 cents on that? Like, what's the balance between these three components?
Yeah, it's interesting how it's all sorted out. And I've done all those things you said. We started as a sales dealer only. Then we acquired our install partner after 4 or 5 years in my last thing. And then we even did that with commercial. And we were doing it all. And I can tell you when we made the most money is when we were focused on just the individual one thing, our superpower. So some real numbers, I'll share at least 2 different years in those 10. One year we did 12 million in revenue and we made $1.3 million, and we were a sales dealer only. And then when there was another year where we were doing huge commercial projects and we were in 5 states and we had 200, all these employees in residential, commercial sales and install, 53 million in revenue that year. And we made $200,000. So to your point, I lived it myself and I felt like we had some of the best in the world. We really, like these guys that I worked with, some of my partner stuff have gone on to do extraordinary things since then. And especially at the time, these guys were people that helped develop the NABCEP curriculum for, which is like the master's degree of installers and stuff like that. So got to meet President Obama and consult with him, like one of my partners, on the Solar Ready Vets program. So some pretty amazing credentials in our company. And yet we still had a struggle with. So I think the summary is, let everybody focus on what their superpower is, and there's just purity in focus. If you're great at sales communications, stick to revenue generating activities, and you see these guys start to try to do other things, and it rarely works. There's very few examples of it working long term.
Yeah, no, I had a client, I went and consulted him probably 6 months ago. He's doing like 20 a month. and now he's doing like 80 a month. So it's cool to see him grow. But I talked to him literally on Saturday or Friday, and I was like, I won't say names, but he's in California, and he goes, I'm so sick of these installers and blah blah. And I swear, like, he goes off on this rant of like EPC people are crooks, and I just can't. I'm effing doing it myself. And I was like, I know you too well, and if you don't have anyone, like, you don't have time to even sell and run your sales team, let alone now you're going to add installing, and you don't have like a right hand, you don't have an operator, you don't have I'm like, okay, dude, like, I think you should think through this real quick and maybe just mend that partnership and maybe have some strong conversations and like strengthen the relationship there, or change that team, or, something. But I was like, I don't know if you're ready for doing all the things yourself. And I was like, believe it or not, I guarantee your sales will go from 70, 80 a month back down to 20. And you're going to be like, where's all my money? And it costs money to do all that. And I was like, I don't know if you're like, I don't know if this is a good idea. And I kind of had to and I'm like, it might be the path. Like, I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I was just like, how do we, so let's talk through this. He has a bad experience with his EPC company. Feels like, they're shady and they're taking advantage of him. How do we build more trust and have better communication, visibility, integrity with partners? Because I feel like partners, we all hear like, oh, never partner, never, like, do it all yourself. Like, what's your 2 cents on that?
Yeah, I think it's a great topic. First of all, we saw that problem all the time, and that's part of what Quativa was built for. So, to help bring together sales teams and installers in a more effective way. And we do that with our technology in our marketplace so that everybody competes based on performance. So I'd throw that out there, but my experience with it is just, I think when you create a partnership, starting it the right way, there's always going to be bad players and stuff out there, but they usually sort themselves out. And I think, there's usually just like, when I hear his story, I instantly assume like, there's miscommunication, someone's busy, they got behind, and now things have snowballed. And so emotions run high. There's a lot of money at stake, and it's easy to point the finger and blame other people. It's usually not, especially now our industry's been through so many of these that most of the bad players have been sorted out. They didn't make it, like, you usually have to be pretty good to still be around at this point. So I feel like, it's in the early days, anybody was doing it, but there's been enough to sort people out. So if you're still around, I think most of the people are pretty good, especially on the install side, because most of these guys have been around for several years. So I would say for me, that's one of the things I thought would be good to talk about is how to be outward focused when you create a partnership. So right out of the gate, it's what I do every day now, but also in my past, I got a really cool experience to learn and see this firsthand from a billionaire that we did a lot of solar for at my last company. We did it like over $100 million in solar with him over 6 years, and watched how he did partnerships and how he set them up from the beginning with the right expectations. And the way that I really have learned this is you're outward focused. So whether it's with one of your employees that you're just hiring, or a sales guy, 1099, or, you're getting divorced and you're like trying to figure out how to settle everything, like, what is important to them first. So I think it's something that can affect you with your EPC, with employees, everywhere in your life. Everything's really a partnership. How you deal with your family, your kids, your sister, your parents. I think it affects everything. They're all partnerships if you think about it. And so being outward focused, you already know what you need and want, but if you can figure out what they need and want, it's amazing how many times you can get those things to really correlate and actually get excited, or just find out up front if those things don't align, instead of figuring it out 6 months, a year, or whatever down the road. And so making sure you're asking them and really get to like what's really important to them, and being outward focused. So got a fun story about that with him, but if you want me to jump into that.
Yeah, jump in. I'm listening. This is good.
Yeah. So I think with this one, it was fun because it's always fun to hear stories and get to interact with a billionaire. It's pretty rare you get a chance to do that.
Yeah, like money, their idea of money is unfathomable in a sense. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure.
Yeah, you do the math. I remember hearing the math one time, and it was just some crazy thing. Like, I think it was Trump, and this was way before he was elected or anything. And it was like him, like, buying a helicopter was like us buying a Subway sandwich or something, just like it is. It's really interesting how you think it just wouldn't matter, or they change. Like I remember the first time I met him, he's 66. He was 62 at the time. And I was just thinking, you're a billionaire. What are you doing in this conference room right now? But it's not about the money. It's about the game. It's about the fun. It's about building, that's what they really like doing, at least with Deloitte. So yeah, we met with him and we had a situation where we're building a stadium. It was our first project, ironically. He said, let's test you out on this stadium. So just to keep that in mind, it was a 2 megawatt project, $6 million. At the time, it was the fourth largest solar project for any pro sports venue in the Western Hemisphere. So it was big. Like Gillette Stadium is a megawatt, right, where the Patriots play. Little Real Salt Lake soccer team did a 2 megawatt project, right? So it's a pretty big deal for him to do that. And we met him in February, first day. He said he wanted to go to contract by March and be up and running by October.
Wow.
And we did it. It was crazy. We had never done anything like that even since that fast.
Even to write up the contract, to get the lawyers to just.
Exactly. Sandy City, story, to get a permit, right? The funny thing about that is obviously they love having in there. They have a stadium and all the income that comes from that. We didn't get the permit technically till the day before we turned the system on, but everything was fine. But that's just how fast everything had to work. Everybody was working together with a partnership. So yeah, pretty remarkable. And one of the stories really came after with the partnership. So one of the things I picked up early on with him is he just preached to us. It was a 3.5 hour meeting. This is what I want you guys to make on your margin. If you're not making that, let me know. If you're he really wanted to be very transparent and here's what I need. I need transparency. I need trust. And I think for him, he's probably dealt with his whole life a lot of inauthentic relationships, people that know, because everybody knows he's got the money. And so I think one of the things we did well with him from the very beginning and why he trusted us after is we had an opportunity where after the project was installed, we had a really crappy situation happen. So this will get a little technical. Some people enjoy this, but when you do a big commercial project, the utilities sometimes get a little nervous. That's a lot of energy being put into the grid. So you don't just submit for a net metering permit and it gets approved. This is a big deal, right? You're pushing a ton of juice through the grid in that area. 2 megawatts is a lot of power. And the utility didn't even understand some of it. They didn't even understand well. And so if you think about how our power is produced, usually it's with the motor or something spinning, right? And so they have something called hotline blocking. And what that means is if the grid needs to be shut down, let's say a power line gets knocked over, they need to immediately shut down the power source so it doesn't keep pushing power through that and kill somebody. So they wanted us to install what's called hotline blocking, which is a mechanism that essentially just switches that power off immediately from the source. And this thing was going to cost $150,000 room right there to close off the solar. And we were trying to explain to the utility, solar doesn't spin. We can just flip a switch and it's off. You don't need to have something cut it down so that while the motor is spinning, it's not still putting power out. So bottom line is the utility wanted us to install a $150,000 thing that wasn't needed. And in order to get the system turned on so he'd get the tax credit that year, that was what they wanted. And we were like, you don't need it. We're not going to spend this money. And 150 grand on a $6 million project isn't small, especially when you're getting tested by a billionaire. And you're like, hey, the utility wants us to do this. So we're going to need a change order, $150,000. So we decided to just go tell them the truth. This is what they think. And we don't think they need it. And so we understand we're telling you that we think we know more than the utility company about their own grid, but that's the truth. So they want you to put this money up, $150,000. And they'll do some more research and decide if they need to do it or not. But in order to flip the switch and get your tax credit this year, you've got to put $150,000 down and trust that we're going to get this done for you. And he just figured we're never going to get the money back. Let's just get it done. So that was scary to go ask him for 150 grand because it could have made us look like we didn't know what we're doing. What do you mean? How come you guys didn't tell me about
this? I didn't foresee that. Yeah, that's a scary
thing.
You
guys shouldn't. So it was scary just to be honest with them, but we did it. So that was a scary part. First one is just being honest with them about what's going on. And then number two is about 7 or 8 months goes by, and I'm sure he just forgot about the money, figured there's no way the utility is ever going to give that back. And we kept following up and teaching them how it worked. And Rocky Mountain Power said, you know what, you're right, you don't need to do this. So they actually wrote us a check to our company for 150 grand and gave them, because it was an escrow. And we could have just deposited that and nobody would have known. There's no way, it would have been gone. And we were meeting with him about doing a bunch of his apartments and stuff. And at the end of the meeting, I didn't think much of it. I was just like, hey, one more thing before we leave. And we're just getting to leave. Here's here's this check. You remember when we said that we didn't think that we needed to do this thing and they said we did? Well, here's the money. It came back. And he, like, I've never seen this guy. This guy's on top of it. He's all over. He's Mr. Business, but he got emotional. And I actually have a picture, like, he gave me this big hug and it just meant a lot to him. And to your point, like 150 grand to him is nothing. It wasn't about that. It was about, and it's something he already had written off. It was about the authenticity, the trust, the integrity, which is something that he really, really was important to him. And so,
yeah, because any business owner, I mean, him on an extreme, I couldn't even imagine, but I've felt like that where on both sides, I felt like, man, these people just took me, like, and it's frustrating how like they can't authentically own up to their mistake, the money, the whatever. I mean, I just had a situation where I had to pay a guy back $7,500 on Saturday, and it was just like, I literally looked at him and I was like, I have zero reason to pay you this back. I have zero reason to like I have all the contracts and all of the reason to keep this. But if you literally feel so distraught, so frustrated, so taken advantage of, like, I'll give you the money. Like, that's on your head now to decide if you feel like you were just whiny playing victim. You know what I mean? Like, and I just am like, dude, I'm gonna always take that high route. But it was just interesting, like, just any exchange. Like, I've seen so many fights, so many bad relationships, so many burnt bridges, and that trust obviously didn't just make you the extra profit on that one job. I'm sure that trust is like, let's go do all the jobs. Yeah. What did it lead to? I'm curious, like.
Oh man. Yeah. That's funny you say that, because of course, the trust was there to do a $29 million project that was the first of its kind in the world, Soleil lost, but dozens of others with him as well. But even within that exact story, you asked a perfect question on that. In that story, gave him 150,000 back, which was a ton of money to us, nothing to him. And what he immediately said back after he like gives me this hug, he never hugged me before. I've never seen him hug anybody really. So at that point, now we've got a great relationship, and that happens all the time. But he said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a $30,000 integrity fee. That's what he called it. And he's like, and then he came and visited our company. I asked him if he'd come speak at our company, and he brought, I think it was $300 cash for every employee. And that sounds like, oh, $300. When you do, I think it ended up being like $20,000 or something. I don't remember, but put all that in cash and envelopes was a ton of work. Like, it was just, it was just a lot of work, a lot of things that went together. And it was pretty remarkable that he did that. And then he came and spoke. And then that on top of that, we end up taking the money. He gives us the 30,000, and he was building a new club, the Audi club at Real Salt Lake. And so we learned from what he did, and we recycled that back and said, hey, we know this new club is really exciting to you and you want to be a part of it, or we want to be a part of it. We want to help you get it going. Cause he really wanted us to join these clubs. And we're like, and these things are expensive to go to all these games and these tickets. But we took the money he gave us and we just put it right back into buying tickets there. And we got to meet a lot of really cool business relationships. And he introduced us to a lot of people that way. So it just kept recycling itself, and we kept building on it. And so it was really fun to learn from him, and to see that firsthand from somebody that does it at the highest level.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's not every day you get to meet a billionaire. And I guess a question there would be, if you're going after and looking for EPC partners, and there's thousands of them, you're going after, and you're helping partner with sales companies too. Like, you're onboarding companies all the time. And there's an element of like, how do you vet? Like, what questions do you ask so that you can quickly identify value systems and, probability of success, things like that? Like, what are some of the questions you feel like would help you as you, move into a partnership?
You should do a podcast for a living, man.
Oh,
You're just great at questions, man. I love the questions. So I think that's a great question. I hadn't really thought about it like firsthand. Like, what does that actually mean? What questions to actually ask, like, consciously? But what I think I look for is, are they outward focused, right? Like, what questions are they asking me? Are they just like, what's your red line? What's this? What's that? When I see them asking questions about how Quativa can serve their reps, that's usually my biggest indicator. like when they go straight to like, how's this going to affect my guys, way before how much more profitable is it going to make me, how much easier is it going to make my life, when they start saying, is this going to help my operations girl that helps me with all this stuff, is this going to help my reps, that's the first thing. I haven't had one example where that's not the case. You can usually just tell that if they're driven by that and what's best for their team first, and if that is not boxes checked really big, they don't even care about what it's going to do for them yet. And that's the first thing. It's become really easy to identify that. So usually I don't even have to ask too many questions. I just listen to the questions they ask, and that's how I can tell how they're driven.
So what about, when you aligned, obviously working with Trent and some of the other owners at Quativa, a lot of people are like, oh, I'd never partner. Like I've had a relationship with partners that I've just avoided. And it was because I watched my dad get screwed over millions and millions of dollars due to a scumbag that just took all the money. Like, you know what I mean? And I think I had childhood trauma, like just being candid, where I'm like, well, my dad got screwed twice on bad partnerships. And, he's kind of always ingrained that, but it's like, that's just a belief system I had. So watching Deloitte create his billions wasn't just alone. I'm sure he did it with amazing teams and partners. And
to actually, to your point, I've never seen him do a deal where he's the whole owner ever. He doesn't own, I've never seen it. He does it every single time. He always brings in partners. He brings in guys he used to work with. Hey, you're going to jump in with this with me. He always brings investors and partners. I mean, obviously I think it's smart. He believes in diversification, but it's interesting you say that. And he's rarely even, I see him being the majority. He doesn't even have to be the majority partner every time. Just to emphasize your point, it's a really interesting thing I didn't know about him until I got into his business after several years. I was like, does he own 100% of anything? He always brings in all these other partners all the time. And obviously they trust him,
So like, with you and your, you have to say, where do I put my time, my energy, my resource? And I'm sure that there's been tiffs and moments of like, F you, like, this is not, I'm doing all the work, you turd. Why are you in Mexico for 3 weeks? Or whatever, I don't know. I guess talk me through how you've made your decision as far as why align with Trent and other guys.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I really don't think anybody's had a perfect experience with partners. I mean, I've had other partners too, where we brought people in and then they end up being a huge anchor, and as much as you do everything and be outward focused, they just take advantage. And I've had multiple rounds of that in our last company. And it was amazing when the first time that happened, as soon as the first partner was removed, we doubled the next month. It was, we were distracted, if you could say anything else, as far as the other owners, but yet the culture or whatever, it's amazing what it will do. So, when you just see how they behave, people can change, but usually, who they are at their core is who they're going to be in business. And so when you talk about examples of like, well, you're in Mexico, it's like, well, I would never have a partner that would do that. They would come and talk to me up front, like, hey, this is what I want to do. I mean, one point Trent actually, we've been partners for 13 years in multiple businesses, to your point. And we started in solar together, and we've had some incredibly tough things to go through. And somehow we've always navigated it. And there was a time where he wanted to take time off and build a house and everything. And he did for almost a year. And great, he talked to me about it. This is what I want to do, whatever. And then he's like, because of that, you should have this bigger salary, and I'm just going to take this. And he had the whole plan, and it made sense for us. Like, it wasn't like, hey, I want to still make the same amount of money and do nothing, because I can legally. And so that was an example where, just because of who he is, he always was thinking outward focus. Hey, what would be fair if I took some time off and he's going to now carry a bigger load? I'll be a consultant role. Like, let's give you this, let's do this for you, whatever. And if you know what I mean? It was just an easy conversation because he put himself in my shoes. And he was clear and direct about what he wanted, and so that was an example of where that happened. And so I just think you find the right people that have integrity, and that's such a word that's overused and a lot of people like to broadcast, but when you actually see it in action over and over and over, when things are really tough, it's really easy to get along when things are really good. And so I just had multiple rounds of that with him. And then my partners at Quativa, same thing. I mean, just to see how they behave when things are, or hear the stories of how they behave when things are really hard. it gives you a visibility on how things are going to be when they're really good. Because that's also when you hear partnerships get really nasty is, oh my gosh, everybody's making money, and then all of a sudden somebody gets greedy. So yeah, you just watch behaviors and how they behave on the extremes of everything. And when you see certain behaviors that are scary, like that's definitely something you want to run away from. And when you see behaviors when times are really hard or times are really good, you latch onto those partnerships. I mean, I'm doing like a real estate thing. Trent's never even met this guy. He has nothing to do with it. And I'm like, hey, if I do this, Trent and I've always had this thing. We're doing something in business. We're always going to come to the other person and give him first right of refusal to join in. And Trent will probably do nothing with it. Like he might be the guy that reads the documents because I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to bring him in because I trust him. He'll be a second set of eyes on everything with whatever we're doing is diversity. And we just have this rule between us, like, hey, if we're doing something in business, there's an opportunity, let's give the other person an opportunity to jump in, even if you had nothing to do with it, because what goes around comes around. So just kind of a rule we live by, and it's served us really well and might serve others.
How often, because obviously you're in like your own little worlds, doing your own little things and roles, how often do you meet to cultivate that partnership and that relationship? And like, how much time maybe on and off work do you spend making sure? Because I look at a partnership almost like marriage. Like you're literally like spending even more time than probably your family sometimes together.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, what is there any kind of system that you found that works for you guys as far as communicating, as far as meeting, as far as building that to where it's worked for 13 years? Because I don't think there's a lot of people that could say, yeah, me and my partner have been together for 13 years. Like that, yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think early on, we always would make sure, like when we were building the companies, like we do a lot of lunches together, just a lot of that. Right now it's hard. It's funny you bring that up because we're relying a lot on the reservoir we built up, the bank, with each other, because we barely can talk. We're so busy in our roles day to day. I mean, we're super focused. He's the chief operations officer of Quativa. There's a lot there, and we're growing really fast. And so I was laughing about how like we barely get phone calls in, and it's just like, we don't even say hi. It's like, hey, I need this thing. Cool. And like, it's that bad, but we do go when we travel, I think is a really good opportunity. Like if you can go, like if you can't even get these lunches in, which we can't even do right now because things are so busy. We do travel together on certain trips and stuff. Like we just went to Florida and launched a few new companies there. And so when you travel together, right, you're on a plane together, you're at hotels, and that really guarantees you get a chance to reconnect that way. Cause I think it's impossible if you don't do some of that stuff, it will eventually crack because you just start assuming things, you start getting off on, you don't even realize what's going on in their life. And so to your point, a system would be really good. And we're in a place where we're relying on, it happens in a marriage, right? Like there's times where life gets crazy and you've got to rely on,
we know that we're committed and we know that we love each other. That's about it. Like no more needed. Cool. No, this has been good. And I've liked to where this has kind of gone and going. And, if you're listening to this, like maybe you're not an entrepreneur, maybe one day you're going to be an entrepreneur. Maybe your buddy's always been itching your ear being like, let's go do this, man. And you're like scared or, and I hope this is giving tools or thought processes, ideas, learn from the wise, like take the mistakes and the lessons that somebody else is learning and use that relevant information to make your decisions. And, I have had to change my tune quite a bit recently. Like I have an interview today at 3 for a guy to kind of partner in and take over Recruitomatic software we built. And I was like, hey, I'll just hire you, give you equity, like let you run. And I'm changing my relationship to partners recently, as far as like even our business development department. I'm like, hey, I'm open to even just affiliate partners like with you or with other, people that we can cultivate that just are strong win-win scenarios. And if it's not a win-win deal, no deal, right? And it's like, how do we, build ultimate trust? And then I think it's like, my dad always said, he's like, great contracts make great partnerships. And, it's like, I think a lot of people are afraid to vet out or don't have the thought process to be like, like people jump into business, hey, we're 50-50. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like 50-50 could be all sorts of things. It could be, decision-making. Is it vesting? Is it, what happens when this happens? Is it money? Is it are you coming up with the same, if expenses, everybody splits it? Is it, what I mean? Like rainy day, like, and I think a lot of people don't think through that, but if you built out a really clear operating agreement, you just fall back on that versus the emotional, kind of I feel like you should pay for that. It's like, oh, why? Like, why do you say that?
I love that. It's exactly what I was like. You start off with just being truly transparent at the beginning. I mean, it's funny you say that, Sam, because I remember going through this learning curve myself. I remember 10, 12 years ago, like I was like, we don't want to know we make a profit. They're going to look down on us for that. It's like so weird. Like that's how my young 23, 24-year-old mind thought, was like, well, if they think we're making profit, they're going to want, the customer's going to want that or whoever. Right. And it was amazing. Like you learn over time, like it doesn't matter. And then seeing Deloitte Hansen just literally like, I'm going to make 11, I'm going to have you make between 10.5 and 11% margin. And if you do a really good job, you get 11.5. I mean, he just said what you're going to make and here's what I'm going to make. And it was just like, just no shame on, I'm a business and I'm here to make money. Here's how I need to make money. And so if you can start a partnership, just saying like, what do you guys need? Because you have some guys that like, for what I do, they want a really big M1 payment, right? And some guys want the red line. Obviously, you have the guys that want everything, but the guys that are worth partnering long-term, to go back to your question of like, what do you look for? It's like the guys understand you can't have everything. So like I had a company recently, like, look, the red line doesn't matter. I need something competitive and I'm capitalized. I don't need huge $23,000, $4,000 M1 payments up front. What's important to me is I need your 30-day installs. If you can really do that all the time, then I'm good here, right? So it's easy to just really focus our efforts there and making sure we get in the markets that have those, right? And so it's easy for me to come back and say, this is what I need. This is based on what you said, this will align really well. This one ask you have, it doesn't fit, like this is what I need. So and then you work on it together and then you just know up front, if you get stuck and it doesn't work, and you know up front, versus doing a partnership and you're both faking something that is never going to work anyway. So just know up front.
Yes. So important. So I'm going to wrap up with that one because that's good. I mean, hopefully somebody listening to this right now is like, oh, I'm in the thick of that right now. Or, oh, I was about to go down this rabbit hole without that. Like, hopefully you guys took some value out of this. Guys, go check out Quativa. They're a great platform for, from a knocking CRM connected to EPC solution to really, get your installs in, like, don't have to do all the things and they streamline that. And so is it Quativa.com? Like how do they find it?
Yeah, Quativa.com.
Quativa.
Yeah.
And yeah, Jess, I appreciate you being on the show, man. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you. And we, Door.com was amazing, man. That was our first launch, right? A year and a half, well, just over a year ago at Door.com 4. I just want to give you a shout out on 5. It was incredible. Like it exceeded our expectations once again, and it was just an incredible event. So I hope they keep building. We were excited to continue to be partners on all that.
Thank you, my man.
Really helped us jumpstart our company, man.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, well, we'll talk soon, brother.
Hey, thanks, Sam.